Chief, I'm the NDP candidate for Winnipeg North in the by-election that's coming up on the 29th. I'd like to thank Willow Park East Housing for putting this on, and David, who's just here. Thank you. The most typical question I get asked is why I'm running. It's pretty simple, because I really love Winnipeg North. I've lived here my entire life. In fact, I grew up on Burroughs Avenue for 20 years. It's a place where I'm going to continue to live the rest of my life. My wife is from the area. We just had a son 8 weeks ago, so I campaigned during the day. I do diapers at night. We're going to raise our son in Winnipeg North, and so I just wanted to make sure when people were approaching me about potential to run, I wanted to make sure that I understood that politics wasn't simply about getting up one morning and saying I want to run and represent. I always believe that politics should be something that other people see in you, and if they see that ability in you and they think you have the leadership ability to do it, that people approach you. And this was no different. People approach me. I talked to many people about running, and I asked one simple question: based on the work I do now, if I ran and won as MP for Winnipeg North, would I contribute more to that job than what I was currently doing? And all the people I talked to all said yes, and that was a big reason to do it. But we know that politics is tough, and a lot of people say, well, you're doing good work before, so why would you get into such a tough thing? And it can be. We can spend our time being critical of one another, and every time that we spend, criticizing and being negative is one less breath that you use actually for ideas and thoughts on how you can be innovative to come up with things to improve the lives of people. But I always understood that politics was about potential. The potential we see in each other, the potential we see in other individuals, and certainly the potential we see in our communities. And, it's been a big part of my job. And, there's a lot of issues we got to discuss, but there's also some values. And one of the things that we've been able to do in our campaign is when you walk through the front door of our campaign office, what you will see is about 400 faces. The people who are volunteering, they make up the ride. They're from the furthest tip in Douglas to the farthest tip out in the Maples. They're represented in terms of their ethnic background down to their age. I always laugh that we have a picture of my son. At the time, he was only 3 weeks old. We put him on the wall and we said he's the youngest NDP volunteer in history. But we also have people out that are in their 80s that in all honesty have voted for the first time. That's what our campaign is about. And it's important to talk about values when we talk about politics. And we wanted to build a strong sense of belonging for everybody. The other thing I understood about politics is it's an ability for us to get out and contribute. And our campaign has been about that. When you define the word generosity, it's not simply about how much money you have and how much you don't have. Generosity is something that's fair and equal, and true generosity is to give away something that we all find very important to us, and that's time. And so we have 300-400 people giving up their time from all different backgrounds to participate in this campaign. And that's an important value. And if you get people that just are lower on the socioeconomic ladder and they get to work with other people and get the same sense of contribution and generosity, I think that's very important. But we provide enrichment activities for children, typically for children who can't afford it. We've provided summer employment for young people who typically can't find a job. We've tried to work very closely. I've worked with Dr. Axworthy. I'm very proud of that, to make university accessible. So a mother who just raised 3 kids, a single mother at home, would like to access post-secondary. We make sure that the financial means to do it through bursaries and scholarships are there, as well as the courses that they take. They don't have to come on during the day. They can come in the evenings. It's a big part of my work. The majority of my work that I do support the people, the families in Winnipeg North. And I do got to say, and I'm very proud of it, that there are a lot of volunteers from Willow Park volunteering on my campaign. I mean, it's a fact, and I'm very proud of that. I know I've worked very closely with Doug Martindale and Judy Washalisa. But when we look at all the things that are going on in Winnipeg North, there's some serious issues we got to discuss. One of them being crime and safety. It's a very important issue. It was important before I got into politics with the work I did. It's important now, and it's going to be important after. And when we talk about crime and safety in the community, I have a good working relationship with the Chief of Police. I'm very proud of that. I think that's how you get things done. You find ways to work with people from different backgrounds that are doing different kinds of things. We've hosted community events together. We've worked one-on-one on doing things like crime prevention through social development. He's very committed to those things. And he said to me that he'd welcome more police officers, and we've heard this before. Part of that is not just having more police, but them getting out of their cars and building relationships with people. And we seen the incident when those 3 people got shot. The police were struggling to get some of the information they needed from the residents because they were so scared to talk. Well, we've got to make sure that if we have additional police that they're getting out of their cars. The other thing is I always talk about a tiered approach to tougher laws. That if you're going to commit a serious crime, there's going to be a serious consequence. There's no question about that. And part of my campaign, I announced that I would, through a private member's bill, make gang recruitment illegal. So that when teachers are watching street gangs trying to recruit kids or parents, that they can pick up the phone and take some action on that. But every time there's a crime, there's a victim. So we have to talk about how do we prevent more victims from happening. And my work that I've always done, providing youth additional opportunities, doing everything I can to partner with public education to make sure young people are getting high school diplomas. That we say to the kids of Winnipeg North, look, a high school diploma is simply not enough. We've got to do everything we possibly can to make sure that you attend post-secondary. And if you're willing to do that, we're going to remove barriers that hinder that participation. If we can start providing those types of opportunities, which organized structured programs, creating employment opportunities, it's a great balance that you talk about around crime and safety. I know that today's, there's going to be a lot of questions around housing. There was a time when I used to work with high school principals in this area. They would talk to me about the reason young people are not doing well academically is because they're not understanding curriculum or there is a behavior issue. Now if you go and talk to principals in this area, they'll tell you the number one thing hindering academic achievement for many young people is inadequate housing. They will tell you that as a fact, that young people who are in inadequate housing are not going to learn at the same rate as a young person with housing, with affordable, proper housing. And so the NDP promotes a very aggressive strategy called the 1% solution, where 1% of every dollar spent in the federal government would be allocated to housing initiative. The other thing that we're advocating very hard for is an actual national housing strategy. So you're not just dumping a bunch of money in, but you actually have a strategy and you have targets on how that money is being spent. I'm also a big fan. I was very fortunate to, I bought an older home in the North End on Park Street. It was 100 years old and it was a renter. And I got to take advantage of the retrofit program, where I got some tax savings to retrofit my house. We advocate to bring that back. As it relates to Willow Park, I'm very proud. My aunties and uncles live in it. My friends live in it. I probably frequent here twice a week. Very proud of that. As I came through door knocking, I bumped into Peggy. And absolutely. And she said, "You have to come inside this house. I got something to talk to you about." And she told me what was going on in door 7 and the challenges that were going on. Now, I wasn't a politician at the time. I was just like anybody else. But when I heard the issue, I picked up the phone. I called Mike Pactigan. I'm very good friends with Mike. He started to give me some details, and he says, "Look, I understand what's going on there, Kevin. I know what's happening." I picked up the phone. I called Doug Martindale. Doug then, of course, called the minister to deal with the Northwest. So talked to the Minister of Health and got the ball rolling. Make no mistake about it. I'm not taking credit for any of the changes that happened. All I'm saying is that when I talked to Peggy, immediately after, I picked up the phone and started doing what I could. I didn't do it because I'm a potential MP or not an MP. I did it because it was right. And then when the meeting was frequently, I didn't know what was going to happen. City of Winnipeg brought their people in from property planning development, and I sat here with everybody else and I listened. Now, it was a great meeting to be part of, right? But I was here with you, listening to what was going on. And I think that's what's important, that when people from the community get together, we work with our local bureaucrats, as you see, and the messages are strong, and gets up to the politicians, you typically can get what you want. But you have to find ways to work together. There's also been a lot of talk on issues with seniors. And we have to recognize that if we invested $700 million a year sounds like a big number, but in terms of the money we spent federally, it's not much. $700 million would take every single senior citizen above the poverty line. This is a group of people who built our country, who've clothed us, who've fed us, who've done all those things. $700 million would do that. I think that's a reasonable thing to invest in for you. We all recognize that anything to do with pensions haven't kept pace with the cost of living. And so there need to be increases there and some type of analysis on how we do that. My mom and so many others that I know struggle with their bills because their prescription drugs are high. We need to come up with a national plan for pharmacare and something that makes sense and works. Some of this stuff falls in seniors, also falls into healthcare. Now, this isn't a big problem in Manitoba because we have an NDP government who advocate hard against this, but we have to do everything we can to stop privatization. Creating some kind of tiered system doesn't make any sense. I know I'm a product of this. I just had a son. My wife and son have a doctor. I unfortunately can't seem to get the same family doctor because that doctor is booked. So there's a need to find ways to increase the amount of family doctors that are out there, not simply just dropping into a walking clinic, but actually having a family doctor. And there's incentives that we can come up with to engage people who are graduating from medicine to actually get into family practice. And of course a national home care program as well. There's a lot of issues, there's a lot of things going on. You know, just touched on a few of them, but I'd like to now open it up if there's any questions. Anything that I've said.
Thank you, Kevin.
Question? I'm just going to say something. Everybody knows that the crime has risen here in this, Winnipeg North, all over Winnipeg, and people have been saying this for years and years and years. So this time I would like to see somebody that actually shows some action as to bettering the community, because nobody can even walk around the streets. The whole of Winnipeg has labeled Winnipeg North as the hood, which I find it disgusting. And every time there's an election, every time there's people coming around saying they'll do this and do that, I don't see many changes going on here because some of the community centers have been shut down. There's no place for the kids to go. There's no sports events for them except what you've done, which is a great thing, Kevin. But what about the rest of it, you know? And there's got to be so much cleanup here in this part of the city that, you know, you kind of get tired of hearing the same thing over and over again. And like same with Manitoba Housing, our neighbor here across the street. There's no place for these kids to go hardly, nothing to do, even the teenagers and even the seniors, there's nothing. Everybody's just rolling around that circle of poverty. And this time I would like to see and hear what somebody can do for this part of Winnipeg.
I agree. Look, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you work in public education or have access to post-secondary initiatives, whether you run a community center or you represent the most powerful organization in the city, which is the City of Winnipeg Police. At the end of the day, no matter what comes up, it's crime and safety is not the issue for one single person or one single group to deal with. It's going to take the entirety of a community to do that. I think we need to be able to find people that can bring people together, whether it be our seniors groups, whether it be someone who has an expertise in working with young people and engaging them in meaningful ways, whether it be